Good evening, everyone, and welcome to lesson number 2, Mind Yourself, Reflecting Inward to Find the Divine. This is lesson number 2, Meditation from Sinai. So let's first do a brief recap of lesson number 1 so we can kind of track our progress. So last week we discussed how Jewish meditation has always been a part of Jewish practice and is in fact a part of daily Jewish ritual. It's really the essence and the core of what davening is all about. We learned about the goal of Jewish meditation. The goal is to focus your mind, to focus your thoughts, to produce healthy, productive emotions. We spent a lot of time focusing on how our emotions are actually born from our thought. And then we practiced various meditations about how to disrupt our negative emotions by shifting our thoughts. So last week, it was all about investing our mind in tangible positivity, giving birth to and producing emotions as a result of focusing our mind. And we applied that specifically to when we are experiencing negative emotions. You had some homework. Part of that homework was to practice this a little bit, to be conscious and aware of what we're thinking, being aware of whether what we're thinking, how that impacts on our mood for the good or for the negative, and trying to think and shift our mind to something else to produce the positive emotion. Did you do it? Did it work? Success? I can tell you I did it, right? I definitely did it, and it worked, right? And it worked. So I hope that you'll continue to apply this in your life, even beyond this week's homework assignments. This week, we're going deeper. Like this week, we're going a lot deeper. We're not just going to be learning strategies on how you could change your emotion when dealing with kind of anxiety and things of that nature. Jewish meditation can be profoundly eye-opening. The goal is to see things from a truly different place and a deeper place than we would otherwise. We want to notice things about ourselves and notice things about the world that we previously were not aware of. So today, we're going to really focus on discovering spiritual awareness and using this also as a lens with which to view the entire world. And we're going to learn about 2 different, very powerful Jewish meditative systems. But we're going to begin with a story. It's a story that you probably heard before. In fact, it's a true story, but it serves as a perfect analogy for what we want to try to accomplish tonight. And that is the story behind a shul in Krakow that's called Isaac's shul. What's the story? This man Isaac has a dream. In the dream, he is told that under a bridge in the city of Prague, there is buried a vast treasure that will instantly transform him to be one of the most wealthy people in the town. He wakes up, he thinks, that's a beautiful fantasy. That was a great dream. If only that would be true. And he goes about his life. He has the dream a second time. He has the dream a third time. He says, maybe I should do something about it. He travels to Prague. He locates the bridge. He waits till it gets dark. No one's around. He has a shovel. He's digging. And all of a sudden, a cop passes by. What are you doing? Right? Destroying a city property, digging under the bridge. And he says, I have to confess, I had a dream that there's a treasure buried under the bridge. So the cop says, what kind of a fool are you? I had a dream that in Krakow, underneath the stove of a man named Isaac, there's a huge and vast treasure. You don't see me running to Krakow and digging up people's houses. And he says, get out of here. Isaac returns back to his home in Krakow. He digs up the stove under his house, and there he finds the treasure which transforms him into a wealthy individual. He donates, he sponsors, he builds a beautiful shul known as Isaac's shul that has his name on it. Great story, fabulous story. So often in life, we're running, we're looking for our treasures in some distant location, anywhere but here. When the truth is, the reality, if we dig a little deeper in our own place, that is where the ultimate treasures are to be found. This story, perfect metaphor for what we want to accomplish tonight. There is a natural desire amongst people for meaning in life, for purpose in life, for spirituality. There's a craving that the human being has for it. And so often people run all over the place searching, where can I find that foreign location where there will be that magical spiritual energy that's going to transform and uplift and give purpose and meaning and guidance to life, right? Often we feel that. Now, Judaism teaches that the greatest spirituality is right here within us. We don't have to travel somewhere to find it, not physically and not spiritually. It exists within us. What do I mean by that? The soul. Right? What do we know about the soul? So there are certain basics, fundamentals. What is the soul? It is that which gives us life. If you have the soul, you are alive. Right? If you don't have the soul, you're not alive. So that's one thing, right? The soul is the life force that exists within us and makes us alive. But of course, we know the soul is much more than that. So let's go to text number 2. It's on page 40. So that's the second text towards the bottom of the page. Stephanie, would you like to read this text number 2?
Sure. My God, the soul that you placed within me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me.
So this is a very, very important statement, because it tells us that even though the soul is our life force, it's part of our body, it's part of this world, the soul is not altered or changed by that. The soul doesn't somehow have a new definition. The soul remains pure. The soul remains divine. So that means within us is not only a life force, but there's something pure and divine. It's part of us, but it still remains part of God at the same time. It's mine, but at the same time, we're acknowledging it's yours as well. Now, in Kabbalah, it discusses an even deeper level of the soul. Craig, you want to read text number 3, and we'll get you the next text as well, because it's just a one-liner there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have my book today. I will bring it next time, but I can't read today.
Okay. All right. Debbie, you up for it? Text number 3.
Yes. Okay. So the human soul is the candle of God.
So this is a great line, right? Beautiful metaphor that King Solomon uses. Now, why does he choose this metaphor? What is similar about a flame, about a candle and a soul? What do they have in common? Anyone want to guess? Any thoughts? All right, Debbie, why don't you read text number 4 and give us some of the answer?
Sure. Text number 4.
Yep, next page, page 42, text number 4.
Oh, yes. The nature of a flame is to flicker upward, indicating that the flame intrinsically seeks to part from its wick in order to unite with its source above. Similarly, the human soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and escape its body in order to unite with its origin and source in God, the blessed source of all life.
So this really is an incredible idea, and it's pretty much brand new information for us, because this goes contrary to everything we know about the nature of existence. Because as far as we know, everything that exists wants to continue to exist. In fact, if you boil it down, the number one motivating factor and the number one drive of all things that exist is self-preservation and self-gratification. Everything wants to continue to exist. That's our most fundamental, most basic identity. Self-preservation and self-gratification. Think about an animal. An animal marks its territory. This is my space. If you get too close, I will attack. Self-preservation, vital, critical. What does an animal do all day? Eats, right? Looks for food, right? These are the most basic, fundamental stuff about all existence. But the soul is radically different. That's not how a soul functions and a soul operates. Everything in existence wants to continue to exist. The soul is unique that it does not want to continue to exist. The soul wants to merge with its source. The soul wants to be one with God. The soul is not excited about independent identity. It has no concern for self-gratification. It has no concern for self-gratification. It wants to be one with God. It wants to be a part of God with no individual identity. It would rather dissolve out of existence. Now, there's nothing else in nature that's like that besides fire. Fire has to be forced into existence, right? You got to take two rocks and smash it together. That's how we produce fire. We're pretty good. We made matches, but even a lighter, what's the idea? You have to force it into existence. What does it do while it's existence? It burns things up until ultimately achieves its goal, which is to disappear. Right? That's what happens when fire is able to burn and ultimately follow its natural path. It goes right out of existence. So it burns and destroys until it achieves its ultimate goal of not being. What happens to fire? Ultimately, fire disappears. This is the nature of fire, and this is the nature of a soul. Our soul really does not want to be here. But this is not what it's all about. It yearns for something higher, bigger. It wants to connect with its infinite source, and it sees and it feels that objective every single day. The identity of the soul is to dissolve, to merge, to become one with its infinite source. That's what it's all about. And the implications of this idea are absolutely staggering. Why is it staggering? Because you know who has this soul? You do. I do. That means each and every single one of us has this inner consciousness, this divine spark that desperately desires to pursue truth in the deepest possible way. It burns, it rages within us like a consuming fire. This soul force recognizes the futility of materialism and wants to return to the ethereal. You and I have this most powerful spiritual thing, and it exists within us. And in fact, it's the core, and it's restless. Just as fire flickers and moves and shakes, we have this incredible thing within us, this most powerful soul. Yet, as we know from our own lives, most of the time, we are not even aware of it, right? Most of the time, we are not warmed by its flame, even on the slightest possible level. We spend most of our life pursuing self-preservation and self-gratification. We, so to speak, mark our own territory. We chase away anything that seems to be threatening our calm, our peace, our relaxation, and we pursue self-gratification. But why? What happened to the soul? If we have this most powerful, godly, spiritual, selfless, pure, passionate engine within us, if we have this pure divine soul, why are we so dominated by our physical and material self? And the answer, of course, is we have a body. Right? We don't only have a soul, we have a body. And the nature of our body is, if we don't eat, we could die. Right? If you don't drink, you can die. Try not eating for one day. We have this thing called Yom Kippur, right? People are hungry, people are thirsty, people are distracted. If you don't sleep for a night, you get a little cranky, you get a little tired. It's not very healthy. There's an automatic response that our body has to not being taken care of, to not its needs not being fulfilled. However, the soul, it's not tangible, right? It's not a concrete entity. And therefore, unfortunately, if we don't feel the soul, is the soul starving? It's starving. But it's not concrete, it's not tangible. We don't feel it the same way with the body. The needs of our body tend to overwhelm the soul and quiet that soul down. So the body very much gets in the way of the soul. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is going to be our primary operating system? What is going to be our primary way of identifying myself? Will I tap into the unbelievable power that exists within my soul? Will I allow the soul to be my driving force in life? Or will I be content to pursue self-preservation and self-gratification, eat, drink, and be merry? That is the question that we all have to ask ourselves. And this is where Jewish meditation comes in. This is where Jewish meditation can play a major role, because it's incredibly beneficial into helping us access our inner spiritual core. Because we have to remember, we don't need to head to Prague to find that treasure, right? We don't need to head to some foreign destination, a foreign location in search of some type of powerful spiritual energy, some type of elaborate trip. We have it right here in our own house. There is a fiery flame that exists within each and every one of us. All we need to do is access it, right? We need to learn how to dig underneath that stove and discover it. And Jewish meditation, of course, helps tremendously. There are two types of Jewish meditation that we're going to focus on today. Right, this is all right. The first one is called hisboidus. It comes from the word badod, which means seclusion. If you want to put it in a one-liner, it means spirituality by subtraction. And I'll elaborate and explain what that means. The Jewish form of meditation known as hisboidus means spirituality by subtraction. What is the goal? We want to strip away the body's materialism to tap into the soul within. Using the metaphor of digging for the treasure, it's methodically clearing away the rubble in order to get to the treasure that's within. So it's spirituality by subtraction. We're going to strip away the body's materialism so we can access the soul. Again, the metaphor with the guy going to Prague, it's methodically digging and clearing away that rubble so you can access the soul within. So in hisboidus, a person wants to distance from material distractions to discover spirituality. In other words, spirituality by subtraction, subtracting the material from the world. That is Jewish method number one, and we're going to spend some time to really explore it in more detail. Method number two is called hisboinenus, right? Hisboinenus comes from the word bina, which means understanding. It's the practice of meditating on a concept to deepen your appreciation of it. So while hisboidus was spirituality by subtraction, hisboinenus is spirituality by intention, right? It's a little bit different. In hisboinenus, we want to focus on the soul so intently that the body can't get in the way. Using the metaphor of the person digging for the treasure, this is not a methodical process of clearing away the rubble. This is diving straight into the treasure, right? It's going right for the treasure. Both are valid approaches, but they're two different ways of hopefully ultimately getting to the same place. Any questions so far in anything that we have studied? Yes, Debbie, please just unmute yourself and go for it.
Yeah, just I'm a little bit puzzled on the second word I'm not finding in the textbook. I see Hidbodenote, and then is there a different one? Hispenote?
So I'm going to be doing this in a slightly different order than the
Okay.
textbook. So
Okay.
you will find both words in the textbook.
Can you say,
Textbook.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
In the textbook, right, it goes one at a time. I just gave you both right now.
Okay,
Right?
nice.
So don't worry. We are now going to go through one at a time. And you will
Okay.
see in the book all the words, all the terminology
Oh.
spelled out very clearly. But
Okay.
as you're going to see, I'm jumping around the text. I'm doing it a little bit differently. I have a different way that I want to present it than just
Okay.
the way it's laid out in the book.
So
Okay.
one other practical question. So with the whole thing with the spirituality by intention and the soul, so like it could be, for example, just a meditation with where you're focused upward, like that type of thing.
But we didn't get there yet. We're gonna do some of it. Right
yeah,
now,
I did that.
right now,
Yeah.
we just have definitions.
Okay.
What those definitions mean, we have to unpack them, and that's what we're going to proceed to do right
Okay.
now.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Phil.
In the text regarding the flickering of the soul, and the previous one, the flaming soul, the flaming soul, the text on the side attributes that to King Solomon, and the flickering of the soul by the small text on the side attributed to Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Lady in the 1700s. So when did the flickering of the soul, as you described it, the concept of the soul wanting to elevate itself and leave the body, when did that get formalized as the concept, as the way the soul works? Was it in the 1700s, or was it earlier, and Rabbi Shneur Zalman was just articulating it in his writings?
That's a great question, and my understanding is that this Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, he was just articulating something that was well known and incorporated within Kabbalistic teaching. So you have a biblical verse from King Solomon, right, that shares this idea. Then Kabbalistic interpretation of the idea is what the Alter Rebbe was presenting, and I would believe that this is the Alter Rebbe's particular formulation of an idea which was well understood within the Jewish mystical tradition up to this point. But here's just a beautiful text from the Alter Rebbe where he explains it so nicely.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is try to understand the word hisboidedus, and I apologize that hisboidedus and hisboinenus sound very similar. they sound very, very, very similar, and that can be confusing. But first step is hisboidedus, which is spirituality by subtraction. We want to strip away the surface material consciousness. We want to strip away the body, so to speak, which is interested in self-preservation and self-gratification. We want to uncover the pure raw soul that's beneath. So we want to clear the noise. We want to eliminate the distractions. What distractions are we talking about? The distractions of the body, right? The body that says, feed me, right, etc., etc. Everything that the body represents, we want to clear ourselves from that, strip that away so we can hear the soul which is underneath. The word hisboidedus means seclusion. You go to a place that's quiet, that has no distractions, no noise, no other people, right? You want to be in a secluded place. We want to break the shell of the ego, of the self. We want to isolate ourselves away from material pleasures. And it works. It's something that actually works. The son of the Rambam writes about it, text number 5. Phil, would you like to read text number 5? Page 43.
All right. I'll pronounce it Hitbodedot, is one of the most superior of all the distinguished practices. It is a practice of the greatest saints and the medium through which the prophets experienced revelation.
The son of the Rambam says this is fantastic stuff. This works. How does a prophet become a prophet? By completely secluding yourself away from all the physical material distractions of life, making those physical material distractions of life not relevant, not appealing, not playing any role in your life. What's left? You're a soul. What does a soul do? The soul convenes with the spiritual. What's normal, what's tangible, what's concrete for a soul? Godliness. That's what makes prophecy available. When you get to a point where spirituality is as concrete to you as the physical, that's where you can enter the prophetic world. The Shalah, right? He describes the core practices of Hisbodedus, and I just want to read his brief biography just so we have a sense of who the person was and when they lived, the person who's making the comment. So you could look on page 44, Rabbi Yeshayahu Halevi Horowitz, and I would bet anything that Leah Stein is a direct descendant of this rabbi, because her maiden name is Horowitz, and she is a Levi. She's just like Rabbi Horowitz. So odds are like 99%, she is a direct descendant of the Shalah. So he lived at 1565 to 1630. He's a Kabbalist, and by the way, I am a direct descendant of the Shalah as well on my mother's side of the family, but side point. Okay. He's a Kabbalist and author. Rabbi Horowitz was born in Prague and served as rabbi in several prominent Jewish communities, including Frankfurt am Main and his native Prague. After the passing of his wife in 1620, he moved to Israel. In Tiberias, he completed his Shnei Luch Zabris, an encyclopedic compilation of Kabbalistic ideas. He is buried in Tveria and Tiberias, right next to Maimonides, right next to the Rambam. And his work is one of the works that that the book of Tanya is based on. A lot of the ideas of the Shalah. Okay, let's go to text number 6. Stephanie, please.
All right. It's recorded in many of the works of the medieval rabbis that seclusion, Hisbodedus, separation from everything mundane, parachute, and devotional clinging, devakut, was practiced by the pious Jews. This is to say that when they were alone, they would empty their minds of all worldly concerns and connect their minds with the master of all existence. The famed Kabbalist, the Arizal, taught that this practice is far more beneficial for the soul than study, and that every person should practice this seclusion meditation according to their ability, either once a week, once a fortnight, or at the very least, once a month.
So first thing I want to mention here is that you can see how the idea of meditation and spirituality within Judaism is not some recent invention as a response to Jew booze, as I mentioned in the first lesson, right? This is deep ancient stuff. And here we have the Shalah describing it, right, so many centuries ago, and how essential and critical and vital is for everyone to be involved in it. So what does he describe? He says that Hisbodedus requires seclusion, which is a physical space that is away from material distraction. Number 2, he used the word separation, right? You need to have a clear space in your mind, right? You need to get to that space into your mind. And 3rd, he used the word clinging devekus, which is clearing both external and internal distractions to allow access to your soul. In other words, Hisbodedus is founded on a very simple principle, which is by silencing the body, the soul can be heard. Right? This is what Hisbodedus is all about. Hisbodedus has evolved over the centuries. There are many different ways, many different traditions, many different focuses on how a person can practice Hispaidus, and we're going to look at two common ones. The first one is Hispaidus, the way it was taught by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. So Rabbi Nachman of Breslov was a very famous Hasidic Rebbe. He was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe, right? Rabbi Shner Zalman Liadi. He lived at the same time. He unfortunately passed away very young. We're going to go all the way to text number 16. So Mitchell, would you like to read text number 16? But we're not going to read the entire text. We're just going to read the first two paragraphs because otherwise these are lengthy and detailed ideas. I highly recommend you read them on your own. But we'll go to page 63 for text number 16, just the first two paragraphs, please, Mitchell.
Oneness with God. Itabadubu, seclusion is the highest acid, greater than everything. It requires setting aside at least an hour for secluding yourself in a room or a field and finding ways to enter into a dialogue with the Creator. Use words that evoke favor, placate, and conciliate in order to entreat and plead with God that He bring you closer to Him, to genuine divine worship. Conduct this prayer and conversation in the language you normally use, your native tongue, because it is difficult to express all that you desire to say in a holy tongue. It is not your native language. In your native tongue, you can express yourself fully. Share with God everything that is in your heart. Express your remorse and repentance for the past. But please, to genuinely merit drawing closer to God from this day forward, similar conversation, each individual according to the spiritual standing.
All right, we'll stop there. So Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, his form of the Hispaidus is, we have that element of seclusion, right? Stripping away all distractions, but he adds a component here, talking to God using your own words. Express what's in your heart, express what's in your soul, the most critical, the most important spiritual things that are relevant to you. Text number 17 is also from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Debbie, would you like to read text number 17? Just the first paragraph. Just the first paragraph of text number 17. And again, I highly recommend you read the rest on your own.
Okay, sure. So to merit this, to return and be encompassed in God's oneness is possible only through Hitul, self-surrender. We must surrender ourselves until we are encompassed in God's oneness. The only way to attain Bitul is through Hitbodedut, through secluding ourselves and conversing at length with our master. We thereby merit to negate all our physical desires and bad character traits to the point that we merit negating all our corporal reality and are encompassed in our divine source.
Thank you, Debbie.
Sure.
Later on in the paragraph, he says, emptying our hearts and minds of all worldly matters, negating everything until we merit true bittul. So previously we talked about how, what's the nature of all existence? Self-preservation and self-gratification. So Reb Nachman of Breslov says, we need to get rid of that. You need to seclude yourself, distance yourself from any and all distractions, remove from your consciousness the motivation and the desire for self-preservation and for self-gratification, and then speak to God using your own spiritual voice. But this is the practice of Hispaidus as espoused by Reb Nachman of Breslov, and there are many Jews who practice this today. There are some Breslover communities where a person might have a Hispaidus room, a location where they can go, a private space where they can try to engage in this. And so another form of Hispaidus was taught by Rabbi Kleinmus Kalman Shapiro, the Piznetsner Rebbe. Now, unfortunately, he was killed in the Warsaw Ghetto, right? He was killed in the Holocaust. However, while in the Warsaw Ghetto, he wrote a tremendous amount of Torah. He shared his thoughts, his feelings on the experience of losing his wife and losing his children. I mean, everything that he went to, he did everything in his power to inspire and to keep the faith of the people around him. And he wrote it down and he buried it in milk jugs. And it was found after the war. We have his writings. It's very powerful stuff. It's called Eish Kodesh, right? That's what it's called. And it's translated into English, right? It's available. I have a book, you could buy a book. Very inspiring, very powerful stuff. A real deal Rebbe who lived in the most challenging times. This is his version of his Hisbodedus. Phil, would you like to read text number 18?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let me get it. Okay, here it is. Page 68, is that correct?
Yeah, from the top of 68.
Okay, the Talmud states that a dream is a 60th of prophecy. The explanation of this is that our self-awareness prevents us from experiencing the divine. As long as we are awake and conscious of ourselves, spiritual presence of the divine cannot rest on us. Conversely, when we are asleep, our awareness and consciousness are quieted. Our sense of self is no longer present and the spirit can rest on us. For that reason, our dreams contain a fraction of prophecy, because while we sleep, our sense of self is not present to disturb the divinity. Our goal, however, is to attain the sleep consciousness while awake. This is achieved through silencing our thoughts and desires that control us incessantly. Here is a practical direction to achieve this. First, we simply pay attention to our flow of thoughts for a set time. We will eventually notice that our mind is emptying and our thoughts are slowing from their habitual hurried flow. We should then repeat a single verse or phrase, such as God is truly God, in order to insert a thought of holiness into our now open mind. After these steps, we can articulate a need for help in any of the many areas of character development with which we require assistance to improve, be it our faith, our love, or awe for God. Here is a suggestion for work on strengthening faith. Quote, I believe with complete faith that God is the only existence in the universe. There is no reality other than God. All the world and all that exists is but a ray of his light, unquote. This should be repeated several times, but not forcefully. The whole point is to quiet the self, speaking with forcefulness to align, to arouse the ego. Rather, we utter the phrase with extreme gentleness. Or if you wish to arouse love for God, say, I wish so much to be close to his blessed essence. My deepest desire is to feel that I am forever growing nearer to the mighty creator.
So the Hisbodedus of Rabbi Kalonimus Kalman Shapira begins in a very similar way to that of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov: seclusion, isolation, separating yourself from all distractions. But he does something a little different. Instead of talking to God in your own words and expressing your particular challenges, he says, focus on a particular idea that you want to inculcate within yourself, right? A verse or so on, right? This is the style of Hisbodedus as practiced by the Zetzi Rebbe, right? Silence your thoughts and desires, empty your mind, fill that space with a specific Jewish intention. It works, right? And it can actually lead to very powerful spiritual experiences. And it makes total sense, because what does a body think about, right? What does a person think about? Don't tell me, right? We all know what goes on in our mind, what we crave, what we desire, right? We're very aware of that stuff because that's what bodies do. But you know what? Souls also have the most powerful of powerful spiritual desires as well. If we can only silence the body, if we could remove the distraction, strip away that element from being our conscious and driving force, oh my gosh, you have any idea what the soul can see, can experience, and accomplish when it's the primary voice? Let's go to text number 7. Stephanie, I think we want to go to text number 7. We're going all the way back to text number 7. Let's see, what page is text number 7 on?
Page 45, I think.
It
Text
is
7.
on page 45, text
All right.
number 7.
Okay.
This is Rav Hai Gon, and you notice the lived 939 to the year 1038. Very important figure in Jewish history. Go for it, Stephanie, please.
Okay, you may be aware that in the view of many of our great sages, there is a technique for individuals of extremely advanced character to experience the mystical visions of the divine chariot, the angels in heaven surrounding God's throne as revealed to Ezekiel and others, and to gaze into the spiritual chambers of angels and the like. They would fast for a designated amount of days, then place their head between their knees and whisper copious songs of praise to God with their faces towards the earth. This opened them to mystical visions and allowed them to experience roaming the heavens and exploring its supernal chambers with clarity. There are 2 works of the Mishnaic sages regarding this, entitled Hekleot Rabati, the Great Chambers, and Hekleot Zutrati, the Minor Chambers. This is all very well known and was regarded by all the sages as authentic. They insisted that God performs miracles and wonders through saintly individuals, Sadiskim, just as he did with the prophets, and that God shows them awesome visions just as he showed the prophets.
This is such a beautiful and powerful text, which perfectly describes how prophecy is possible, how mystical experience is possible. It's very simple, right? When we view the world from the perspective of our body, what do we see? Lunch, right? That's what we see, right? When we view the world from the perspective of our soul, what do you see? Angels, right? You see spirituality. That's how they were able to accomplish all of these goals using the Hispodidus style of meditation, distancing yourself from the physical material through seclusion, so on and so forth. Your primary identity becomes the soul. Anything is possible when that's the case. So it is Hispodidus. It's the root of divine inspiration, of prophecy. That is the method and the avenue to have Kabbalistic mystical experiences and for your soul to experience incredible type of elevation. Mitchell, does this describe you perfectly to a T? I know you're very humble, right? You don't have to answer. I think it's pretty clear that this is advanced level stuff. It's not easy to divest ourselves from materiality. To silence your mind to this extent, like this is not for meditation 101, right, so to speak, right? This is very advanced level type of stuff. It's not easy to do it and to get there. And what happens when you get there? We know that we have hands and we have feet to navigate the physical world. Do you have the spiritual hands and feet to navigate the spiritual world? It's not easy. Because that's the case, this is the type of thing that had, generally speaking, been taught privately to people who were spiritually fit at an advanced level, who would be able to process this in a healthy way. Because this is something that easily can get out of hand and that can really get beyond. If this becomes your goal, if it's not guided by a mentor, you can easily go in an unhealthy direction. But this is what's attainable. This is a method. This is a process, and it's important to at least appreciate it. And we can apply it at least on some levels to our life, and it gives us an insight into how we can tap into that soul a little bit deeper. Many spiritual masters have recommended more the second type of meditation that we talked about, which is hisboinenus. Sounds very similar, but is different, right? It is hisboinenus. It's not about stripping away and removing ourselves from materialism. It's about cultivating a direct awareness with our soul. It's not about clearing the mind. It's much more about focusing the mind. It's not detaching from the material. It's about attaching to the spiritual. Hispaidus tries to clear away things from the mind. Hispaidus is much more about using the mind to think like the soul. Hispaidus happens to be the preferred method of Jewish meditation as discussed in the teachings of Chabad Hasidic philosophy. Here we're going to have a text where the previous Rebbe, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, discusses how important this Hispaidus is. Let's go to text number 9. Mitchell, text number 9, please, on page 49. You got to unmute yourself first, and then text number 9, page 49.
Bonet meditation. Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak shares a central foundation of the study of mysticism is to repeatedly spend considerable time in deep contemplation on a subject matter being studied. This is a practice that is referred to itibanut, which means to firmly visualize the concept and to analyze it deeply.
So the style of Hispaidus is to study some material. Could be a Kabbalistic text, a Hasidic text, an important spiritual idea. You study it, you analyze it, right? You visualize it to the extent that it becomes a part of you. It's not just information that you heard about or you are aware of. It becomes information that's a part of who you are. You react automatically to it because it becomes a part of you. It feels so real. Right? That's what Hispaidus is all about. We're going to go back many centuries, almost 1,000 years, to a great rabbi and Kabbalist who's known as Rabbeinu Bechaya, and he connects this idea to a very important biblical verse. Phil, please, text number 10.
Okay, text 10 on page 50. You shall take it to heart. This is a positive commandment to know God. We are enjoined to investigate and develop an appreciation of God's unity and not rely solely on received tradition. However, since the spiritual understanding of the divine is abstract and not easily understood, the verse emphasizes that we must take it to heart. The Hebrew term for take it in this verse more literally means return it, indicating that we must repeatedly contemplate the concept until it settles in our mind. The term take it to heart always refers to a matter that requires profound concentration and extra focused thinking.
This is an idea which is huge in the Chabad tradition, right? When you are in yeshiva, you are taught to study and you are taught to practice this type of Hispaidus. Anyone who has been to a Chabad shul in a Chabad community like Crown Heights type of a place, if you walk into a Chabad shul on a Shabbos morning, you will see people who have a talis over their head, not for 5 minutes, but for 20 minutes, for an hour. And what are they doing? They're trying to take this idea of Torah that they learned and really understand it and connect with it. Come up with an analogy, come up with a metaphor, come up with an idea that makes it more real to you, right? And really integrate it into who you are. Focus on it and identify it. Text number 11a is from the sixth Rebbe. Again, continues to elaborate on this idea. Stephanie, please. Text number 11a.
His Boydnet is an internal dialogue with an idea. Once we have studied something well in all its fine details, explanations, and commentaries until we have developed a thorough understanding of it, the practice of Spoidenet meditation is to then mentally analyze the idea to verify whether our understanding is true and accurate in all of its details. Through diligent meditation, we develop a strong visualization of the soul of the concept, which is the animating core of the idea itself.
So we're studying the idea, we're visualizing the idea, we're picturing to it until we can feel the idea, right? That's how much connected that we become. And finally, text number 11B. Debbie, would you like to read text 11B on page 52?
Yes, so page 52. Okay. The Hasidic practice of Hitbonenut meditation involves actively contemplating a spiritual concept until it expands our creative intelligence, deepens our awareness, and becomes an indelible part of our consciousness.
So again, another beautiful description of the goal of Hisbonenus. And this idea is captured in perhaps the most famous biblical verse and Jewish prayer, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What does that mean? Shema Yisrael means, listen, Jewish people, hear, understand, contemplate this idea that God is one. What is the very next verse that we say? Ve'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. You will love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. How does it happen that a person can truly, genuinely love God with all your heart and with all your might? It's only when Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When we truly understand, we contemplate an idea, the unity, the oneness of God, when we really understand it, when we become one with it, the result is going to be that we feel it. We actually develop a tangible love for Hashem. This is the process of Hisbonenus. First, you say Shema. First, you have the Hisbonenus. The result is going to be the Ve'ahavta, the tangible, concrete feeling of an emotion in our heart in the deepest possible way. So far, what we've done up to this point is discuss it. But now we're going to do what Mitchell so desperately wants to do. Let's do it. Let's practice it. Let's meditate. Let's do some Hisbonenus. We're going to study a concept. We're going to roll it around in our head. We're going to think deeply about it. And we're going to see if it has the power to change us. Now, I think it's pretty obvious we cannot do all of that in the next half hour. This is something you need to do and practice on your own over many hours and days and months and over a lifetime. But you'll get a taste and a flavor for it right now. We're going to read a text that was authored by the Rebbe Rashab. That's the 5th Rebbe in Chabad. In the year 1898, he wrote this regarding the idea of tshuva. Text number 13. It's a long text, very powerful, very important. I'm going to read it. So if you can follow along on page 53, text number 13, it actually really starts on page 54 in the English. Everything that exists is comprised of a physical form and a spiritual, divine energy that creates and animates the entity's physical existence. This is clearly demonstrable in animals and humans. They have an animating spirit. If the spirit were to leave their body, the body would no longer be classified as alive, and the body would begin to decompose and turn to dust. That is because the very existence of the body hinges upon the spiritual energy that animates it. The same is true of vegetation. It also possesses an animal spirit. Even inanimate objects possesses some sort of energizing spirit that keeps them in existence and prevents their disappearing. So I'm just going to pause here for a minute, that we could already see the style of Chabad, which is to use metaphors and analogies that are clearly understandable and relatable by the mind to understand a spiritual abstract idea. And here we see it in paragraph number 1. It continues. Based on this awareness, spirituality is referred to as good and life because it is a living force that remains alive and in existence forever. So here we have a definition. The definition of good, right, and life, again, is because it's a living force that remains alive forever. Whereas physical matter is referred to as negative and death. This is why? Because it decomposes and ceases to exist without the spirit within it, and it has no means of existing independently. Right? It's not real in that living sense. From my flesh, I can perceive God. It's a verse from Job, meaning that human experience informs our understanding of God. We intuitively sense that we have a life force that provides us with our life, and that it is our primary identity, and that were our soul to leave our body, the body would be left like an inanimate rock and eventually decompose and disappear. Again, this is something eminently logical. We can all relate to this. When a person passes away, their soul is gone, their body may remain. No one's happy with that. No one is satisfied with that, because we know the true and real person was the soul, not the body. The same is true with all that exists. The entire cosmos and all its contents exists due to a divine spirit that gives existence to everything. That divine light and force is the eternal life and sustaining power of all that exists. If it departs, all existence will revert to absolute nothingness. So here the Rebbe Rashab is explaining this idea not only to people, it applies to every single thing in existence. The same point and idea applies to everything. He writes, if we meditate on this idea, we will realize that the material existence of each entity is entirely dependent on the spiritual force within it, and that physicality is nullified before the presence of the divine light that is its source of existence. This realization will inspire a powerful desire, love, and yearning for the divine. We will no longer desire that which exists only superficially, and which is in fact death, decomposing, and disappearing. All we will desire is to attach to the divinity. This is true life and the mainstay of existence. Right? This is such a beautiful, incredible, powerful text. It's huge. This is a paradigm shifting idea. And it's something that we can all understand. It's something that we can easily relate to, and we could think about it, right? We can make this idea solid and concrete in our mind because it's so understandable. It makes sense. It totally resonates. We intuitively know it to be true. And when we internalize it and it becomes part of us, it completely reframes the way that we look at the world. We just studied 3 ideas, right? Hold on a second. We gotta get back to where we are. Okay. Number 1, everything has a soul. Everything. Human beings, animals, rocks, romaine lettuce. All of it absolutely has a soul. The second idea, the soul is its source of life. If it did not have a soul, it would no longer exist. The loved ones in our life that we cherish, we love them for and because of their soul. Without a soul, it's just a piece of flesh that's not the same thing. And we can understand that the soul is the source of everything that exists. Without that soul, it has no existence anymore. So that means spirituality should be valued. Where should our focus be on life? Is it the body or the soul? Obviously, the soul is the true identity of anything. The soul is the true good. The soul is the true life. Logically speaking, that is where we should be placing our values. Now let's try to develop this idea using the practice of hispainus. What does it mean that everything has a body and a soul? Now we know everything has a body, we can see it. But we also know that everything has a soul, because if it didn't have a soul, it wouldn't exist. But what does that mean on a deeper level? The body is simply the physical component that we interact with and that we see. What is the soul? The soul is not just the life force behind it, but the soul is the deeper meaning and the purpose for that thing. The soul represents the why that thing exists. So we're going to go to exercise 2.4. This is on page 56 in your book. We're going to do this together. This is a fabulous practice of Hispanos to wrap our minds around this idea versus body and soul. So look into your book on page 56. Don't worry, Craig, if you don't have it, we can still figure this out together. We want to identify the body and the soul of the following scenarios. Scenario number 1, dinner with a spouse or a close friend. How would you define this experience? What is the body of the experience? What is the soul of the experience? All right. Do we have a volunteer who would like to answer? Stephanie, you look like you want to answer the question, right? Shaking your head from side to side means yes, right?
Well,
it,
I'm just,
try it.
well, okay, I'm just wondering, like, so you're saying that the body is like the tangible and the soul is like the intangible, like the things that we walk away with. Yes? No?
The soul is the why. It's the purpose. So what is the body of having dinner with your spouse or a friend? Yes, Phil?
Well, the body would be the physical act of eating.
Absolutely, right? That's the body of it, eating. What is the soul of the experience?
It is connecting with the person that you're eating in a sense of understanding, communication, reaching out, something that's intangible, as Stephanie said.
Absolutely, 100%. Every activity has a body and a soul. The body is physically consuming the food. The soul is the purpose. Why are you doing it? You're doing it to connect with others, right? In a meaningful way. There's going to be exchange of ideas, communication, so on and so forth. That's the soul of it. Let's go to the next activity. Disciplining a child, right? There is a body and there's a soul, right? The body is what you're actually doing. The soul is why you're doing it. So what is the body of disciplining a child? Craig, what do you say? What's the body of disciplining a child?
Well, I mean, the words you speak and the direct interaction, the words that you're speaking.
Yep, the action of the discipline, what you're doing. But what's the soul of the discipline?
Well, it's the meaning and the lesson that you're trying to convey, along with the love that you're conveying it with at the same time. The meaning the child takes from it to lead a better life.
Absolutely. That is why we discipline. It's an act and it's expression of love. The goal is to guide and to direct our child to live better, more correct, more purposely, more helpful. That's the soul of the experience. And I think you get the idea here, the same thing, exercising at the gym, right? The body of exercising, that's the physical act, whether it's running, lifting weights, whatever it is. What's the soul of it? To be healthy, right? To be healthy, to be strong. The same thing when the next one is shaking hands for a business deal. The body is the physical act of shaking the hands. What's the soul of it? Shaking hands represent trust, commitment, right? By shaking the hand, we are forming a bond. Everything has a body and soul. That means in every area of life, in every interaction, in every activity that we do, there is always a body and there's always a soul.
Yeah.
There's the act that we're doing, and there's the why, there's the purpose, there's the goal of that action. The question, of course, is what's primary? What's primary? Is it the body or the soul? There's nothing more obvious. Obviously, it's the soul. Shaking a hand is a meaningless thing. My hand touched your hand, mazel tov. Doesn't mean anything. Why does it mean something? Because of the purpose behind it, the goal, trust, right? Commitment, that's the underlying effect, right? Having company over for dinner, it's not about eating. Do you eat? Yes, but that's not what it's about. It's about bonding and connection and forming relationships and so on. Right? The soul of something is what makes it alive, right? And what gives it meaning. Think about a painting that you're seeing. It's not the colors and that the fact that there's substance on a page. It's the emotion that is conveyed when you look at it, right? That is what the painting is all about. It's the life of the painting. The body is really external, right? There, absolutely, Jackie. You got Jackie's Redlich art right behind you, right? There's emotion, there's ideas, there's purpose behind all of that coming through that painting. So the body, to a certain degree, is trivial, right? It's ancillary to the experience. Yes, you need the body to have the experience, but that's not what it's about, right? It's about the experience. That's ultimately what it's all about. So what should we value at any given time? It's the soul and not the body. A phenomenal example of this, which I try to apply to my life because it's very relevant, is sports, right? Sports. I love sports. Unfortunately, I can be obsessed with sports. On Sunday, I have to drive up to Minnesota for this Mayo Clinic appointment. That's 6:30 a.m. Monday morning. You know what's happening on Sunday? The Super Bowl, right? How am I going to see it? When am I going to see it? Where am I? These are very important issues as we plan Sunday. But we have to step back and think about it. Sports has a body and it has a soul. Sports, yes, it is entertaining. It facilitates bonding, right? You're on the same team. You have friends who are on the same team. Together, you root for those players, right? It unites a city together. It unites a geographical area together, right? There's a lot of elements that are positive, but you cannot be obsessed with the body of the game because that makes no sense. It doesn't pay your bills. It doesn't contribute to anything in your life, right? A bunch of grown men playing children's games, right? You have to recognize the soul of it. When you recognize the soul of it, you don't become addicted. It doesn't depress you. It doesn't destroy you when they lose and so on. You have to have a healthy attitude to it. And we have to apply that mindset to everything that we experience in life. We have to think, why do I do it? What's the reason that I have my kids playing sports? What's the reason that I am invested and focused on, whether it's work, whether it's vacation, whether it's various friendships? Because we have to realize in everything that we do in life, we are sacrificing one thing for the other. What are we sacrificing? Is it the body or the soul? If we sacrifice the soul for the body, is that really a good decision? Is that really healthy? Is that productive? When you frame things in terms of body and soul, totally transform things. Because in life, there's always going to be a sacrifice. One of the two is going to be minimized while the other is going to be maximized. What are we sacrificing? Is it the body or is it the soul? This explanation sheds a whole new light and perspective on a very famous biblical verse, which is text number 14. Debbie, could you read text number 14, please? On page 57.
Okay, yes. This day I call upon heaven and earth as witnesses that I have warned you. I have set before your life and death, the blessing and the curse. You shall choose life so that you and your offspring will live.
Beautiful idea. The Torah says, choose life, right? Don't choose death. What does that mean? Another way of saying it, choose life. Life is the soul, right? Death represents the body. That's all the stuff that's limited, that's going to decompose, that's going to rot away, and that's not even the true substance of what you're going after, of what you really want to accomplish. At every moment, we are faced with this choice. Will we indulge in a superficial experience, or will we peel back the layers and enjoy a true, meaningful spiritual experience? Text number 15, Phil, please. Page 58, text number 15.
Okay, so the Torah instructs us, love the Lord your God because he is your life. When we love ourselves, it is the state of life that our soul provides that we love, because we sense that it is our core self. By the same token, we should love God, for he is the source of life for all existence. When we meditate on the reality that divinity is the life of all life, we will desire and love God. Consequently, in all our interactions with the externality of the universe, such as eating and drinking, conducting business, and so on, our focus will shift from the material and corporeal elements to embrace the divinity within them.
Again, a beautiful wrapping up of this idea, which is that we don't need to run to Prague. We don't need to search for spirituality out there. Spirituality is found within. By recognizing that within everything, there's a body and there's a soul. And when we prioritize the soul that is within, there's nothing more spiritual than that. Spirituality isn't out there somewhere. It is the inner soul of everything, everywhere. And again, this idea is logical, it makes sense, it's concrete, right? We gave so many examples. This is the type of thing you could reflect upon, you could focus on, try to really identify within it, right? Train yourself to view the world from the perspective and prioritizing the spiritual, right? This is the type of thing that is a product of focused and continual and regular practice. Take an idea, work on it until it becomes so ingrained, so a part of you, it makes so much sense to you, it becomes so real to you. This is Hispaninus Jewish meditation. All right, so what have we discussed so far? We have within ourselves a soul. It is powerful, right? It's a burning flame. Its focus is spirituality, selflessness, merging with God. That's what's the most important. However, right, very often it is covered over by the physical, the material, and the body. There are two paths to uncovering that soul. One is called Hispaninus. Hispaninus means we clear away the physical distractions, right? And Hispaninus tries to connect us directly to the soul. We recognize that God's light and life force is everywhere and is within everything, and it's what makes everything tick. When we get this, when we see this, we can absolutely transform our lives. Your homework, your takeaway from this class is set aside some time to truly contemplate on a Jewish spiritual topic. Take it apart and dissect it. What does it mean to visualize it in your life? Imagine various scenarios, play out those scenarios, play out how that idea is going to affect all of those scenarios. Really go over it so you get it, like you firmly really get it. Practice this every day, a little bit of time, until you identify with the idea and you're going to feel the effects. So meditate regularly and think about an idea and use it in your own words. Take that spiritual idea and try to envision it transforming your entire life. Remember that there you can go to the website to well, I want to bring it up here for a second. All right, continue learning online, myjli.com/meditation. There are two very beautiful meditations there that you can watch and listen to. There's other videos as well as the PowerPoint. It's worthwhile checking it out. At the end of each lesson in your book, there's also more text and various charts and things that you'll find absolutely very valuable. God willing, we'll continue next week with lesson number 3, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. And remember, this Shabbos, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law will be here. The directors of Friendship Circle in Sydney, Australia, run a bakery, cafe, the whole thing there as well. They're going to be speaking at the Kiddush, right? Any questions, comments? I know we covered a lot today. Yes, Phil.
Let me, okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I have a number of questions or comments. You know, when you talk about the first mechanism of meditation, which is the, let me get to it.
It's Vaididus.
Yes,
Seclusion.
yeah. So clearing out the physical distractions. And so I just wonder what your thoughts are, because you know, there's a lot in the lay literature or the lay practice that is now becoming more and more common in our stressful environments, is to do meditation. And one of the things that they do is to help clear the mind is to do breathing exercises or deep breathing, and it sort of clears the mind for that time frame, and so you can get rid of all those common thoughts about what you're going to buy for groceries tonight or whatever. Just clears the mind. Is there anything akin to that in this first concept, whereby you do physical things like deep breathing exercises or whatever that facilitates that?
Yes, absolutely. So some of the meditational videos that we have in part of this course come from Rabbi Dr. Label Wolf. So Rabbi Wolf is a Chabad rabbi and a Kabbalist who he's from Melbourne, Australia. Although interestingly, many years ago, he was the director of Hillel at UW in Madison, right? So he actually has a tie to this community almost, but we're talking 30, 40 years ago. So he has written books, lectures around the world, and he has developed a whole comprehensive meditation system. You'll be able to get a taste of it in the videos that you watch, and he has a whole discussion about breathing in, breathing out. He's about paying attention to your breathing. He has a book that's called Practical Kabbalah, I believe it's called, that's very, very popular. He has a website, a lot of things. He has a lot to say on it. There are other things as well. There's a rabbi, his name was Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. So he wrote a book about Jewish meditation practices as well, and you'll find some of that in there as well. So there definitely is much to learn, to see, to read, to view on the role of breathing when it comes to clearing your mind in meditation. Any other questions? Yeah, Phil, yes.
Yeah, I have some more. So, when we talked about a lot of concepts, the soul and the body, but yet we often talk about people, particularly children or even animals, and their personalities, how they express themselves, how they act. It's not really their body. I mean, they all have hands and legs, whatever. It's not physically eating, whatever, but it's how they function. And where does the personality of a living being come into play with respect to the body and the soul?
That's a great question. Because of the fact that the soul is integrated with the body, right? That means that the soul is affected by the body, which means the soul's ability to truly express itself will be limited by the physical structure, capabilities, and health of the body. So even though the soul is the person, because of the fact that there is some integration with them, ultimately one is going to affect the other. But yes, the primary identity, of course, is the spiritual one. And it certainly can be cultivated and developed as well. And just as the body is made up of different components, so too each soul has a particular personality. and is a blend of various spiritual ideas. Each soul is unique in that way as well. No two fingerprints are the same, no two souls are the same, so to speak. All right, anyone else have a question? I've 9 o'clock, I have a meeting that I have to run. So yes, Debbie.
Just real quick, I wanted to comment. To me, it was amazing what you talked about. I just had a quarterly planning for business, and they were talking about how you want to think about the why under the why of your business, so you get the emotion and how important that was. And that was the big concept. And then I came here, I'm like, so it's the soul. Anyways, it's really cool, the connections. I just wanted to comment on that.
Beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing. And just as you saw how that was valuable when it came to your business planning,
Yeah.
this is valuable to the business planning of life, of everyday
Yeah.
life, and all
And
our interactions. You know,
I
we
was
have to
actually-
have that same business plan for
Exactly.
all the choices that we make. Very good, Debbie.
Right. Yeah. And I tied it in to meditation, interestingly, when we were talking about different ways, and here we are. So it's cool. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. The class will be uploaded to YouTube. You can share it with the family and friends. And God willing, we'll see you next week, if not sooner. All right. Have a good
Thanks,
night,
Rabbi.
everyone.